Tocho sampo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe chinle yarngoda pegye drolor zambe ze pande lame shabla solwa de omo a guru vajradara sumati munisha uta vardanya shribat Varsa manya sarva siddhi Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa manya sarva siddhi Om Guru Vajradara Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa manya sarva siddhi Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajradara Sumati Munisha Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Pakyuke Kudandagi Lu Pakyuke Sundandagi Tugdandagi Yerme Chikto Chingelo Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Svoha Sashipeki Choshi Meto Tamare Ravalingashi Nide Gempadi Sange Shintu Mikte Ulwarki Drokuna Namandashi Chapar Shoyidam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupara Shua Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupara Shua Sangye Chodan Sogi Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dan Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Drupara Shua
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Lai ke dan ludan jinke drubondan da mi kenam dam drowa kwinge danam chi tsampa tamche ketu dagi chöten to tamche ketu dagi
Good morning. When we recognize or we see something that from our own understanding is something not good, something that generates more malaise, suffering, conflict, etc., from both the point of view of, from our own behavior or physical problems, or from the point of view of social political problems, whatever it is. Using the metaphor, when we see where there's shadow, or when we have a correct diagnosis and we see what the sickness is, our objective is not to point the finger at the sickness or to the shadow. Instead, the shadow should be accepted with kindness. I mean, and it's one thing that's difficult is to welcome with kindness the difficult parts, the sickness, the darkness. And this doesn't mean that we want the sickness to continue or the shadow, the darkness to continue, but it means that we're ready to see, to accept and redirect it so it can be different. There's an enormous difference between opposing something that's not going well, that's not good, and then accepting something and redirecting it so it can transform. I won't go into the analysis of how and why. I wouldn't even know where to start. But we have this attitude that has to do with others, but often ourselves. This attitude of punishment. Almost like if there's something that's not that isn't good, we need to go against it somehow. But that doesn't necessarily help it to change. So if there's someone in front of us and this person has behavior that, from my point of view, is negative, what's my job? What's the best way to interact with that person and that given behavior? In other words, what's my objective? To help that person change behavior. So the question is, what's the best way to interact with that person, with that situation, so that it can be changed into something virtuous and positive, remembering that we're not omniscient. So the one who makes the change is the person, him or herself, and we can only be a positive interdependence. I'm not going to go too far along with this introduction, then we'll get back to our teachings. But our legal system, for example, is based on punishment. So if someone breaks the law, does a crime, does something criminal, what happens? What happens after someone commits a crime? Is there punishment or is there rehabilitation? in your opinion, of the legal system? It's more about punishment. Of course, there are aspects to help the person not repeat certain things, but generally speaking, we can say that it's more based on punishment. And even education, for example, okay, you shouldn't do this, and boom, be it physically or verbally, there's a part of us where we do something physically. Our actions are encouraged by three aspects. There are studies that say we don't do anything if not guided by three forces. One, we do something because we try to avoid a negative result, or we try to get a positive result, or based on some moral question. Why do I not speed? Because I want to show that I want to avoid an accident, I want to avoid a ticket, or I want to make sure that my driver's license is intact, or because because I like to follow the law, and that's a moral question, and I want to respect others. But when we see aspects that aren't positive, and yesterday we saw the 6 root unwholesome factors, and we'll start the 20 secondary mental factors. We should, as we look at these mental factors, we shouldn't get into feelings of guilt or criticism of ourselves. I mean, if we didn't have these mental factors, we would be somewhere else helping other beings. We would be doing something else. We wouldn't be here talking about it. The point is that we are as we are based on all the causes and conditions of this life, past lives, that have summed and up and have brought us to be here. That starting point, as we've said yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, we need to accept ourselves, treat ourselves with affection, with love. And based on that love, we say, okay, I see that here is some darkness, and this is where I want to bring the light, and where we recognize that we have behavior, attitudes that aren't positive, even that we do, that are towards ourselves or towards others. We need to accept them. And it can seem contradictory, but it's not. To say, like, for example, someone comes to us and they have a behavior that I don't agree with. I accept the person, but at the same time, I don't nourish that behavior. And towards ourselves, we accept ourselves when we don't go into opposition with ourselves, but we don't let that habit, that behavior to manifest, to materialize itself in our choices, in our speech, in our actions, and we don't get into an inner dialogue, desire, arrogance, aversion, anger, hate, whatever it is. So this is a very important starting point from my point of view, because when we look at these negative mental factors, we could get into this dynamic of feeling or thinking, oh, look how bad I am. This is not what we want. We want to see the darkness so that we will be able to direct the light. We want to see the sickness so that we can put energy into healing, because we don't heal the sickness pointing our finger at the sickness. We heal the sickness by eliminating the cause of the sickness, changing our lifestyle, taking the right medicine, following the right treatment, going towards healing and not going against the sickness, the illness. And this can be applied in every corner of our lives. When we recognize our mental defilements, we should not feed them like we said yesterday, number one, what first point is awareness. Second point is I don't block it and I don't feed it. And the third point is to give continuity to the second point. So when a mental defilement arises, because it comes spontaneously, it's not something conceptual, it's like a wind that comes, and we just let it pass. And we try to not grasp to it, grasp at it, and try to be attached to our mental defilements, because that exists too. No, we just let it go. We have so much to see. Let's go forward. And today we'll go point by point without getting too much into it. And if we have time at the end, we will dedicate a conclusion. So yesterday we saw, first of all, what a mental defilement is, as we hear at the bottom of page 33. It says the general meaning of an unwholesome mental factor is, as page 32, is in the face of whatever arises, an unwholesome mental factor comes with the characteristics of strong non-peacefulness. And of these 6 root unwholesome mental factors, we have desirous attachment, to project our happiness onto something that cannot sustain it with attachment. And as we saw yesterday, the object of the negative mental factor, either of desire or of anger, it appears to us as being independent, objective, autonomous. It's beautiful, it's pleasurable, because it is like that. An object of anger is an object of anger, not because it appears to us and we've attributed that value to it, because it is like that. And something beautiful, and then each one can go and see for himself, is that when our perception of the object changes, our feeling changes. If in the present moment, if I change the perspective of an object, in that present changes, the object changes. And this helps us understand that even our past is impermanent. And this is something absolutely marvelous. Because in this present moment, what is the past? Where is the past now? It's in our memories. Mostly that, isn't it? Let me just give you a quick example. Example I've given many times. I'm walking down the road and someone pushes me. Yeah, I'm walking down the street in town. Someone pushes me to the side. I fall down and I break my arm with an exposed fracture. I've never had an exposed fracture, but I imagine that it's very painful. I get to the hospital and it's really painful. What feeling do I have towards the person who pushed me? Attraction, aversion, or indifference? I imagine it would be aversion, and this can manifest itself in hate, in anger, feelings of wanting to pay that person back. And then the police come and they say, "Oh, we have a video of what happened," and we think to ourselves, "Oh, perfect, I have something to give to the lawyer and we can finally get this guy." And we realize as we watch the image, and the police say, "You were really lucky." Behind us, the telecamera is frontal, and we can see behind us there's an armed robbery. And they shot in our direction, in my direction. The person who was next to me, who was walking in the opposite direction, saw what was happening, and he saw that they were shooting in this direction. So they pushed me, saved my life. And the police say this, if that person hadn't pushed you, you would have taken that bullet right in the head. Is your arm still in pain? Yes, but has your feeling changed? The past has changed. Instead of having anger, we have gratitude. We don't have that feeling of revenge because we have gratitude. That person saved my life even at the risk of his own. This is an example. When we change our way of seeing things for the past changes. But if we don't go back and see it again, we are stuck on that image that we had. If I had never seen the video from the police and years go by without having seen the truth, I have this feeling of anger, resentment, hate, resentment that grows and grows more and more inside. But going back, seeing it with different eyes, different perspective, that changes everything. For example, there are things that we've lived at a certain there are things that we've lived in our past with under a certain perspective. But if we can go back and change perspective, that can help us to change the feelings that we have here in our present. And now I close parentheses here, just to say that our past is impermanent, and that's something marvelous. The more compassion we develop, the more humbleness we develop, the more wisdom, harmony, awareness that we develop, the more we can go back, look backwards, and heal our negative experiences, our traumas, our judgments. But this is not the subject of today. So, at the basis, it was very connected to, at the basis of our mental defilements, there is the ignorance of seeing the object of our mental development as if it existed in an objective, autonomous, independent, intrinsic way, be it good or bad intrinsically, when instead nothing exists intrinsically, autonomously, objectively. We saw anger, this enormous force of wanting to destroy what we determine, what we think is the cause of our suffering. How often do we go with aggression against the condition of our suffering and not the actual cause? We saw arrogance, this feeling of superiority over others, and we saw ignorance. Ignorance is this characteristic of seeing something in a way that doesn't correspond to reality. So I give meaning to something, that something doesn't have that ability to uphold that name. If I say that this object is a chocolate cake, or if I'm walking down the road and there's a mannequin in the window and I'm convinced it's a person, like at the Kumpen Lama Ganshin Center, it's not there anymore, there at this shop, but at a certain point there was someone in the shop and saw that some people wouldn't come inside. And it was a very, very small shop and had the window towards the road. And they said, oh, so then the person keeping the shop who asked a few people, oh, you walked by, but you didn't come in. And I said, oh, because I saw that person, I saw that there was so and so in the shop. Someone that they didn't get along with, but it was actually just a mannequin that somehow various people actually thought that it was someone that they didn't get along with, and so they didn't want to come into the shop. What happens? It's an erroneous view. So I attribute, I think that there is that given person, but that object doesn't have the ability to sustain the functions, the characteristics of that actual person. That's the ignorance of seeing erroneously. When I'm not aware of certain characteristics, instead, that's the ignorance of not seeing. Instead, when I give wrong value, wrong characteristics to it, it's a diluted, wrong view. It's a okay. The next one today, and we'll go quickly, is Tetsum, is indecisive wavering. What is indecisive wavering? Uncertainty or doubt. Indecisive wavering is the mental factor with the aspect of having two minds towards the truth. It's the basis for not letting the mind enter into virtue. It's the mental factor with the aspect of uncertainty when focused on the truth, such as the Four Noble Truths or the laws of cause and effect. It's like, okay, Buddha said that the cause of suffering are the mental defilements, karma, but is it really true? I'm not sure. This uncertainty brings me to not taking a clear decision. Okay, I'm not going to try to avoid all these mental defilements because I'm not sure that they're really the cause of my suffering. And in the practice of Tantra, for example, it's said that doubt is the greatest enemy of Tantra. For example, there I am meditating. I visualize Guru Buddha in front of me, and it's 5 chakras emanate. But is that really true, or this is just my imagination? Okay, I'll do it, but I don't know if this is really true. When there's this indecisive wavering, we don't put all of our effort into the action, and that keeps us from realizing it. So having doubts, wanting to understanding more, wanting to have a greater understanding, knowledge, experience, that's very, very good. And we shouldn't take things for granted. It's part of the it's part of the effort of the dissatisfaction. Okay, I've gotten this far in my understanding. I want to go further, but then this is different. This is really this wavering, this uncertainty that, oh, go here, I go there. What do I do? And that blocks that. Its function is to not direct the mind towards wholesome action, or to create interferences to correct discernment regarding what should be cultivated and what should be abandoned. It's when we stay blocked, when we get blocked. It is, it isn't, etc., etc., that keeps us from going beyond. If we have a doubt, it's right to try to understand it, to clarify that doubt, learn more to clarify it. For example, along my path, what I've always tried to do is I go along, and when I find something that, if I run across something that I don't understand, I try to understand it. If I'm not able, then I put it on a waiting list. And I say, okay, in this moment, I don't have the resources to understand it well. And here there's a difference that I've seen, an image that came to me not long ago. In our Western way of facing things, knowledge, our path, etc., it's very linear. It's a very linear way. We want point A, B, C, and D. We want them to be connected perfectly. So what I'm doing now, I need to understand it, and I need to have a kind of control over this situation. The Oriental, this Asian way, is more similar to putting together a puzzle. Let's imagine if when we need to to put together a puzzle. Imagine you put in one piece and then you need to find the one right next to. Instead, when we make a puzzle, anyway, I would do like this. First, you divide by color, or and then make the frame. And then by clear pieces of image, and then little by little you put here, little there, and little by little you make little groups. And then at a certain point, it all comes together. The path of the Dharma is much more similar to this. There are times that we understand things, and we understand things, but we're not able to put them together with other things, apply them to other things, or understand. So we put that on a waiting list, and that in the waiting list, it's a question of time, and the time can be years. And there are beautiful moments where it's almost as if we put the pieces of the puzzle together, is if at a certain point we had this, it's almost as we're making the puzzle, it's almost like in certain groups, like for the power of magnets, lots of pieces just come together without much effort at all, and then all the pieces come together, and we see that everything is coherent in its union, in its togetherness, in its whole. So when we have doubts, and it's wonderful to have doubts, to try to understand what we don't understand. Try to see similar aspects, how we can connect, where we connect things, and what we don't understand, we put it on a waiting list. So sooner or later we'll understand that what I've understood is wrong, or that thing is wrong, or that it corresponds to reality or not. And that does make sense. So one thing is a doubt, another thing is an uncertainty. Often what generates the uncertainty is this non-correspondence between feeling and thinking, our feeling and our thinkings. Often there are times that I understand something, but I want something else. And so we get into those infinite inner dialogues, and very often together with that, with this indecisive wavering, they instigate these inner dialogues. So in here, look for this, what is coherent, this what matches, what corresponds our feeling and what we think. Try to find that point of encounter, let's say. So indecisive wavering is really the opposite of faith. I mean, if I go to a doctor, for example, it's fundamental that I have faith. First, I need to look well. If I'm researching, okay, I go here, I go there. But if I go to a doctor, as it's happened to me it's happened to me. I've gone to 2 or 3 doctors, and for me, there are 2 or 3 qualities that are fundamental for having a good doctor. Now it's not the time to go into it. It's happened to me. I've seen certain doctors that didn't have these prerequisites for me to be a doctor. So I said, okay, well, I'm not going to see you, at least not in this context anymore. In other times where those prerequisites were met, and I really felt that I could have faith. But before starting a treatment towards healing, I mean, it's important to have real trust, because if I don't have trust, if the doctor gives me 5 medicines, I say, okay, maybe I take half, and then I don't take the other half. This one, okay. This one, let's see. Then I ask another 25 doctors, and some tell me the one thing, others tell me another, and some give me, they give me another treatment. No, but I should really look into it well, research it well, and then go and follow. Otherwise, I won't be able to follow any path well. This reminds me of a research that I heard. Rohiro, who's here with us, when he was doing his PhD, when he did his doctorate, he had to present his thesis, and he invited different doctors who were there to discuss and argue his thesis. And before that, there was a kind of mini conference, and some of these doctors, they said, they talked about this research that they had done, or other scientists had done. They took many patients who had cancer, tumor, the same type of cancer around the world, and they all were healed from their cancer, but using different techniques. And the research had to do with looking into the common denominator among these patients who had the same sickness and were able to heal themselves with different techniques. So the hypothesis was there certainly was something in common, and the only thing in common that they found was that those patients who healed were absolutely convinced that the treatment they were doing was the right one for them, that it was the one that would bring them to health. So instead, when we have doubt, it is indecisive wavering, it brings fear and lack of strength and non-faith. The next one, Tawa no Munchen, deluded views. A deluded view is a view that functions to obstruct the attainment of liberation. When we talk about view, it's like worldview, how you see something. Generally speaking, there are three types of view: correct views that are coherent, incorrect views, and neutral views. A correct view is a wisdom or a discriminating awareness. One sees something that corresponds. So, for example, someone sees the bell as being impermanent. That is a wisdom. A deluded view resembles a discriminating awareness in that it discriminates its object thoroughly, but since its object perception does not exist inherently as it is perceived, it is not an actual discriminating awareness. In other words, I analyze an object, I get to my own conclusion, except that my conclusion doesn't match the nature of the object. In other words, that object is not able to sustain the characteristics and the functions that I attribute to it. So when we talk about view, it's not something spontaneous. It's something that starts from a process where we receive information, we analyze the information together with our experiences. We put together our lived experiences, the information received, the elaboration of all this, and we get to a conclusion. This conclusion can correspond or not to reality, and if it doesn't, then it's a deluded view. And a neutral view leaves me quite perplexed. It's neither correct nor incorrect. I mean, so I have a certain ignorance regarded to neutral views because either it's right or wrong. But let's go ahead. It's important to recognize the next one. The mental factor of deluded views is subdivided into 5. The view of the transitory collection, extreme views, holding false views as supreme, holding a wrong code of contact as supreme and wrong views. Let's just go through these quickly because we have so much to see. Can someone put the clock right in front of me so that I can connect better to time? Otherwise, I really get taken away. Okay, so let's look at these quickly. So they say that there are 64 erroneous views, and the main erroneous views. And here there are only 5 described. Let's look at these 5 quickly. The first one is Jigta, is the most important. The view of the transitory collection. This is a text from Lama Tsongkhapa.
Tume chötsam yingis takpadan chikpo kansani meto she tembe chir jigdala tawa she ming takpao she sumbataros jigzola tawa kan shenas nyewar lembe pumbo ngabo namlas dagdang dagir yan dagpar jesu tawe söbadan döbadan lodrodan tokpadan tawa kan yimbates tawa tamchegi tenchebe lechenos.
Lama Tsongkhapa defines in the Lamrim Chemo says the transitory collection, transitory refers to impermanence, while collection or view refers to many. The basis of any view is exclusively impermanent and many. And so an individual that is permanent and unique does not exist. And in order to show this, the name transitory collection is given. What is the view of transitory collection? It is seeing the 5 perpetuating aggregates, body and mind, as being a truly existent I and mind, objective, independent, and having towards them patience, desire, intelligence, imputation, and view. Its function is to be the basis for all wrong views. In other words, let's just think about ourselves. An example that's given is if I'm walking down the road and someone calls our name and then says something rude, offends us, something we don't like, we get upset, don't we? Imagine someone gets up and said, "You liar." It touches us, no? That I that is offended, how does it appear to us? As being a union of body and mind, of the past experiences, of emotions, of concepts, in all of its complexity, or something autonomous, independent? How does our I appear to us? Something solid, something independent is there. This appearance of an I that is independent from everything else. And there's a passage of Buddha that I really like, says, Buddha says, "Oh, my dear monk, you know that there is the luggage and the porter." It's ironic. It's the opposite to show that it's the opposite, that there's the luggage and the one who brings the luggage. So do you have a body and a mind? Do you have a body and a mind? Yes. Okay. So who possesses this body and mind? You do. But if you possess your body and mind, that means that you can exist independently from this body and mind. because I can own a house, a car. I can possess many, many things. Because I can exist independently from what I own, what I possess. But I can't possess something from which I cannot exist independently from. So where is this I that possesses the body and mind? Is there an I that's independent from body and mind? No. So do we possess body and mind? Or we are the union of body and mind? We are the union of body and mind. So if I asked you, do you have a body and mind? The correct answer would be no. No, I don't have a body and mind, but I am made up of body and mind. Is that difference clear? But when we ask the question, do you have a body and mind? The spontaneous answer is yes. Why? Because the I appears as if it existed independently of any other thing, like a kind of magical entity that exists independently from feelings, discernment, body, mind, our characteristics, our personality, our past. Our I is its own entity. Seeing this autonomous entity, this I in this way, is called the view of the transitory collection. It's the basis of all erroneous views, wrong views. It's the grasping, in other words, it's the grasping to an identity of oneself as being autonomous, independent, objective. We're not going to get into too many details here. But is it clear up to this point? Good. The name transitory collection comes, there's some philosophers from ancient India. There's a view where the self, there's one tradition where the self is seen as being independent and omnipresent, but it's none of those things. It exists independence of all the other things. Omnipotent, not omnipresent. So let's remember that the transitory collection is the basis. It's what generates this feeling of disconnect from everything else. It's the wrong view of self. The next wrong view we have, it's called Tartha. Let's remember that we could deepen these ideas. We could spend years on this. I mean, then they're subdivided, but we'll just do a more superficial reading. The second one, Tartha, extreme views. Just one thing, getting back to the previous one, it says, I see the I as being something independent and autonomous. It appears in that way. This is not the view. This appearance is not yet the wrong view. The wrong view is when I develop. Here, I use the term patience, desire, intelligence, imputation, and view. It's when I grasp at that appearance as real. So I desire something based on the I develop, I give continuity to that appearance. I analyze it and I agree with it. I interact with the world as if I existed independently from everything else. Similarly, an extreme view, what is an extreme view? It is seeing the 5 perpetuating aggregates. What are the aggregates? The 5 aggregates. Aggregate of form, the body, and the other 4 that compose the mind, feeling, discernment, compositional factors, the other 49 mental factors, all the other mental factors, and consciousness, that primary mind. In other words, when we say 5 aggregates, just think body and mind. So, it is seeing the 5 perpetuating aggregates as being either inherently existent or non-existent, and having towards them patience, desire, intelligent imputation in view. It has the function of being an interference for becoming certain of the Madhyamika path, the middle way. In other words, the extreme views are of 2 types: eternalism or nihilism. Eternalism is seeing that something internal or external, and regardless of the phenomena, that exists autonomously, independently, not interdependently. I see something, for example, I interact with any phenomenon, and that reality appears to me, and I interact with it as if it were objective and autonomous. This is the eternalist view. The other extreme, then it's more difficult for it to exist, is where I see reality and I say, no, reality is a huge illusion, nothing exists. And since it doesn't exist in an autonomous, independent way, nothing exists. The middle way between the two that says, the reality that I perceive, does it exist in an objective way? No. But does that mean that it doesn't exist? No. It exists in an interdependent way, depending on the causes, the conditions, depending on its parts, depending on the relationship with the perceiver, the observer. Everything exists independence on everything else that it interacts with. It's like taking these chairs, putting one in front of the other, and we sit in one chair, and we're seated in this chair, and the chair in front of us, it's this or is it that? It's that chair. I sit in this chair, and that is the one in front of me is that chair. I get up from this chair, and I sit in that chair. So that chair becomes this chair, and this chair becomes that chair. This and that, do they exist independently from each other? If there was only one chair, would there be this and that? No. In Tibetan, the correct term is paridat. Pa is what's there. Su is what's here. It's more than this and that. It's here and there. So here doesn't exist independently from there, and there doesn't exist independently from here. It's like big and small. What determines something being big or small is you need to compare it to something. For something to be big, you need to compare it to something smaller. If something's small, it's because it's in comparison to something bigger. This means that phenomenon exists in reciprocal dependency. So an extreme view is seeing that things exist autonomously, or seeing that because they don't exist autonomously, they don't exist at all. But the middle way is that reality exists, but it doesn't exist as it appears to us in an autonomous, independent way. It exists in an interdependent way. It's the Madhyamika view, the middle way. So extreme views are eternalism and nihilism. Let's go on. These are subjects that if we get into them, we'll spend all day on them. The next one, Tawa Chokzin, holding false views as supreme. What is holding false views as supreme? It's the deluded mental factor that views the true basis of the view, the five aggregates, as excellent, fundamental, extraordinary, and pure, and based on that, has patience, desire, intelligence, imputation, and view. It has the function of being the basis for creating habitual inclinations towards wrong views. It's the view that apprehends an unwholesome wrong view as if it were supreme and thus follows it decisively, accordingly. In other words, on the basis of a view of an I that's independent and autonomous, views are created. For example, the eternalistic view or also the nihilistic view. There can be also many other examples. Normally, the erroneous view are divided between eternalistic or nihilistic. If I look at the law, if I say the law of cause and effect doesn't exist, I'm negating something that is. So it's a nihilistic. It's nihilistic. And there are many, many views that negate what is, or they affirm what isn't, and so they're divided between these two extremes of eternalistic or nihilistic. So if I am convinced that it's not, that there is not there is no such thing as interdependence, that everything is everything is autonomous, and I think that that's wonderful, that's the best way to be. I take a view that is not coherent with reality, and I think that it's supreme. Let's give you an example of a wrong view, that Tawa Chokzin, where we hold these false views as supreme. This materialistic utopia, for example. Is it possible to reach a state of satisfaction and happiness mostly through development of wealth? I don't think so. Is it possible to stay grasping at this idea as if it were supreme, saying this is the correct way, and follow this as if it were the best? Yes, another example, a strong attitude of racism, where one thinks that one has a certain level of superiority, and that others who have other characteristics, their racial characteristics are inferior. It's an erroneous view, because it cannot be this idea. If you analyze it, it cannot be upheld. So one can hold this idea as supreme, and that is another example. We could spend all day making examples. The danger of this is that when we see a false view as being supreme, even when we have the opportunity to, see that that view is wrong, this wrong view keeps us from being to see it as wrong. So when we protect this false view, so I have a wrong view, and then I protect it if I'm holding it as supreme. I remember once there was a friend who had, from my point of view, a wrong view that he considered supreme. It was a monk from India, and we started debating on it. And at a certain point, we got at a certain point he got upset with me and he said, this is not up for discussion because it is like this and it's excellent like this. What does this mean? It means that I have a view that is erroneous, that it does not correspond to reality, but I can't even get into the possibility of analyzing to see if it's right or wrong because I think that it is supreme. Sometimes we think it's supreme because we've made sacrifices for that view. So seeing that that view is erroneous would mean that I have made sacrifices in vain. And there can be many, many forms of these wrong views. So it's very important to not be attached to our views, or to grasp at our views with attachment, but to be open. Because if we analyze a view, if we analyze a view and we see that the more we analyze it, the more correct it is, that's wonderful. And if we see that it's wrong, then we need to change it. Normally, those who hold on to false views, they're afraid of people who think differently. Is that clear? Yes. The next one, Tsutrim Dan Tsuchuk Chokzin, holding a wrong code of conduct as supreme. What is holding a wrong code of conduct as supreme? By code of conduct, we mean it's our way of behaving physically, verbally, and mentally. Mostly physically and verbally, but also mentally. It's the view that sees morality, vows, codes of conduct, and their basis, and the their bases are the five aggregates, and the five perpetuating aggregates, the being, the person, as clean, liberating, and being certain to give rise to definite emergence. It has the function of being the basis for struggling without getting results. We think that it's certain to give rise to getting out of my suffering, but instead it only increases it. It has the function of being the basis for struggling without getting results. It's the view that ascertains that wrong conduct is supreme and right. Even a neutral behavior, for example, believing that making animal sacrifices is an acceptable means for spiritual development. More than acceptable, it would be a correct way to develop spiritually. There are traditions that think that for one's own spiritual development, one needs to make animal sacrifices. These traditions exist. In the past, even more so, but even in the present, they are. They are present. It's a clear example. So one does this not because they feel they have pleasure in doing so, but they strongly believe that they can reach states of peace and well-being by doing something. But it's something that creates even more suffering. So I think that I'm taking behavior, conduct that is wrong or neutral, and I think that it's supreme. When I studied this, the example was given of some antique traditions in India. They said that you need to do kinds of ablutions. but you can put water on your head and recite what you want, but if you don't change your mind, is that going to actually change you? Is that going to bring you out of samsara, free you from your suffering? This is an example of behavior that is not negative, doesn't create any harm, but it doesn't actually bring a benefit, without judging any tradition, because ablutions done in a certain way with certain minds of awareness within a certain context can be extremely beneficial. But there can be many behaviors, not even religious ones, but things of our culture, ways of behavior, physically, verbally, etc., that we take them and we think that these things make us happy and take away our suffering, when in reality they don't. And this is called holding a wrong code of conduct as supreme, when instead it's not, it's erroneous. And the long one, we have lokta, wrong views. What are wrong views? They are views which deny cause, effect, and action, and destroy an existing object. It's a wrong state of awareness with patience, desire, intelligence, imputation, and view in relation to its object. It has the functions of cutting the root of virtue, grasping strongly at the roots of non-virtue, and making one enter into non-virtue and keeping one from entering into virtue. It's the view that believes, that grasps at, it's the view that believes and grasps at concepts such as the non-existence of interdependence, the non-existence of the law of karma, or the non-existence of a reincarnation. So what happens if I'm convinced that every action doesn't connect itself to what one experiences after? Or am I more aware? Do I pay more attention to how I act or not? No, I'm not responsible for what I experience. I'm just a victim of the world. This will bring me to act even worse. This is the wrong view of being sure about an aspect of reality that's erroneous. It's not just a wrong view from the point of view that I attribute a value that cannot be sustained, but it's a view that takes me to non-virtuous behavior. If I have awareness about the view of the continuity of things and the interdependence of things, then I take better care of my behavior. But if I don't have that awareness, then if I don't have an awareness, for example, of the continuity of one's own mind stream, we think that when it's over, and then one wouldn't pay attention to our own behavior. Or, for example, if we think that nature is merely a question of resources to be used by man, but is this a point of view that brings more well-being or suffering? No, if I'm living an environment in an unhealthy way, then that is bringing more suffering, and this is a wrong view. And we can see there are many forms of wrong views. And these are some types of wrong views. You can also classify them in 64 different types. But the point is, among our mental defilements, the main mental defilements, there's also this grasping at an image of reality that is absolutely, that doesn't correspond to reality, it cannot be sustained. And that brings many negative consequences, various consequences. And along the path that Buddha transmitted, the so-called Dharma, we can divide the path into three parts: view, conduct, and familiarization or meditation. Tawa Chupa Gompa. The first view is gradually to develop a view of reality that does correspond to how it really is, and then the contact is on how, and then there's contact and the familiarization on how to integrate the view and the contact. The six root so there's the six root unwholesome mental factors. To look at them again, we have desirous attachment, anger, arrogance, ignorance, indecisive wavering, and deluded views. Of these, the variations come out. These variants come. The variants are called the 20 secondary afflicting mental factors. They're called afflicting because they take the mind away from this peaceful state. They're the negative mental factors that derive from the six root negative mental factors. Let's go quickly to page 17. Spite, and then we'll look at them one by one. We have spite, resentment, concealment of improper behavior, aggression, envy, miserliness, pretension, dissimulation, self-satisfaction, cruelty, lack of consideration for self, or lack of consideration for others. We have foggy-mindedness, excitement, or mental excitement, non-faith, laziness, non-conscientiousness, deluded forgetfulness, non-alertness, and distraction. Let's look at them one by one. Now we're on page 39. We'll go quickly through some because most of these are very easy to understand. What is spite? It's a part of anger. Spite is a cruel mind. Trowa is a cruel mind, a violent mind, wishing harm. It wants to hurt and manifests when near to one's own cause of harm. It functions to take up weapons, punish, or prepare to harm others. It's the deluded mental factor that, motivated by aggression or resentment, wishes to speak harshly or harm physically. It's the moment one gets angry. That feeling comes up. One is close to one's own object of anger. And so the anger grows even more, and that desire to damage that object of anger comes. One prepares, one gets ready to, one hasn't done it yet, but one has this intention to speak with aggression or do something to harm one's own object of anger. So somehow It's a kind of escalation of anger. First, anger is this feeling of aversion that manifests with more strength. One loses control of oneself, and one opposes the object. But anger comes also when one is not in front of the object. So I feel angry towards someone, but I'm not necessarily in front of that person. This mental factors, trowa, instead, this aggression, this stronger feeling, it manifests when we are in front of the object of anger. And at that point, we want to hurt. So with this intention of wanting to hurt that person, that place, that situation, that object, whatever it is for us that we think is the cause of our suffering, we direct ourselves with an action to harm. We want to say something. We want to pick up an object to actually hurt physically. We prepare ourselves to hurt someone. Is that clear? And it's where we see where anger starts to grow more and more. One of the dangers of anger is that we lose control of ourselves, and losing control, one acts physically, verbally. To forget about mentally at this point, mostly verbally and mentally, and one can do things with grave consequences, things they wouldn't normally do without the manifest feeling of anger. Let's jump for a moment and let's go from the first to the fourth. So trowa, from trowa we go to Tsongkhapa, aggression.
Tsikpa kanshena kong trowe chartope trowa dan kuntun zimba ngundu drowes simge kune nar sembates tsiksupo langshins trakpo tenche belechedas rekper mine belechenos.
What is aggression? Having previously generated the parts of anger, of spite and resentment that we'll see after this. Aggression is a deep mind of harming that has of harming that manifests saying harsh words and acting violently. Its function is to not allow for entering into contact with a state of happiness. It is an escalation of the root delusion of anger that wishes to hurt or harm others physically or verbally. As where trowa, spite, when I'm in front of an object of anger and I want to do something to hurt, aggression, Tsongkhapa, allows that to actually happen. So it's no longer a desire to harm, but when I actually do it, when I don't simply go towards the object to prepare myself, I actually take that object and I strike you with it. It's not looking for the spiteful words, it's actually saying them. This is aggression makes that possible. After this, that's that. So that first level is spite, the first level of aggression, and then actual aggression is when it manifests in the body and speech. On one side, it comes from the immediate anger, but it also is generated from resentment, which is the second kunsik. What is resentment? It's the mind that holds on to and does not let go of a previous experience of the manifestations of anger. It's the function its function is to be the basis for not developing patience. It's a deluded mental factor that maintains the continuum of anger without forgetting it and wishes to retaliate. I feel aversion, I get angry. I grasp to that anger, that feeling of hate, of anger, and I stay grasped at it over time. So even an hour later, a day later, a year later, 10 years later, it doesn't matter. I still have an attachment to that feeling of anger. I don't let it go. And from that, aggression also can arise. So aggression, this physical manifestation or verbal manifestation of violence towards a person, a situation, or an object comes from something immediate, then that's something immediate that comes from the spite. Something happened now in this moment and I reacted with aggression. There was an escalation. I want to hurt you, and now I'm going to manifest it verbally or physically, or nothing's apparently happening at all. But there's some kind of trigger, a word, something that really has me come into contact with that feeling, and I explode from resentment. Are you following? And this aggression reminds me of one of the very few times I argued or fought with someone. There was a point of discussion. I had one point of view and someone else had a different point of view. And we were talking about the given point, and things heated up. And at a certain point, the other person started telling me things that had nothing to do what we were arguing about, trying to find weak points to really harm me. And I was there and talking to that person afterwards. I said, you know, what really disappointed me is that you came to say things to me that had nothing to do with our argument, but as if you were looking for something, and you were trying to really to harm me. And this person said, yeah, we were fighting. That's what fighting is. I said, okay, thanks for teaching me what fighting is about. So this is a form, for example, of aggression. Let's remember that there's also the possibility to be firm, to be strong, but without being aggressive. Aggression requires the desire to hurt the object, to hurt the other. Aggression has this at the basis. And it arises, the physical or verbal aggression comes from something that's happening in the immediate present. In this case, you know, we have an argument. The argument heats up. Maybe I'm not able to convince the other, and the other one is convinced of his point of view, and I get angry that I'm not able to convince this person, and that can escalate into aggression. And something else is saying something different is you know, coming up to me and saying, oh, it's really foggy, I just love foggy days, and then I just explode because I had some kind of past trauma with fog or something that happened in relation to fog, and there's resentment it was there hidden, and when you push that button fog, boom, there's an explosion. I don't know if you've ever seen anything similar. I've seen it many times. And it's interesting. There's some people, for example, who have this ability to touch the wrong button. push the wrong
con le
buttons.
migliori delle
With the best of
intenzioni.
intentions.
Comunque sia, è
Anyway,
importante per noi
it's important for
comprendere
us to
che quando c'è
understand
l'aggressività,
when there's aggression,
quando viene fuori questa
when this
violenza fisica,
violence comes out,
può
physical
essere
or
da due
verbal,
cause.
there can be two
O
causes.
qualcosa che sta
Something
succedendo
that's
nell'immediato,
happening in the
o
immediate
qualcosa che è
present,
avvenuto
or something
nel
that
passato
happened in the
che uno
past
non è riuscito
that
ad
one was not
affrontare
able to
bene,
face well,
perché
because
il risentimento è quando
resentment
uno non
is
riesce ad
when we're
affrontare
not
bene una
able to
situazione
face
di
a
difficoltà o un
situation
oggetto di
well,
rabbia,
a
e
difficulty,
rimane
an object of
intrappolato
anger,
con
and
quella rabbia lì, non
it
riesce a
stays
mollarla.
trapped by that
Ok?
anger and
E questi
grasps at
sono
it and won't let it
cose
go.
abbastanza serie,
And that's quite
perché nel
serious,
tempo qual è
because
la
over time, what's the
funzione alla fine di questi
function
strumenti
of
mentali?
this mental
Non
factor?
permetterci di star bene,
Is to keep us from
di
being
non
well.
permetterci di
Doesn't
entrare in
allow us to
contatto con la
come into
felicità.
contact with happiness.
Proprio qua, come viene detto, no?
As
La
it's said here, I mean, the definition
alla fine, qual è
at
la
the
funzione
end,
dell'aggressività?
what is the function
La
of,
sua funzione è
of
quella di non
aggression is to
consentire
not
alla persona
allow
di
the
entrare in
person
contatto
to
con uno
enter into
stato di
contact with
felicità.
a state of happiness.
Io mi ricordo una volta
I remember once
qui che mi sono arrabbiato
I got angry,
e quella rabbia si è manifestata in
and it
aggressività
manifested in aggression,
fisica e verbale, nel
physical
senso che
and
mi sono
verbal,
avvicinato a un palmo dalla parte
in the
dell'altra
sense,
persona,
you
ho
know,
parlato con
I
più di forza.
I spoke with
Era una situazione particolare, qualcuno che non
quite
c'entra con la
loudly,
sacca, lo
and
dico solo perché
um,
sennò uno comincia, ma chi sarà?
and
No, no,
for a very
nessuno che...
specific situation. I'm not
Era una
going to give you
situazione
the details,
particolare in cui mi
but it
sono
was a
trovato.
particular situation I found myself in.
Questa situazione
And
avrà
this
durato, non lo so,
situation
10
lasted
secondi,
maybe 10
mezzo minuto
seconds,
massimo.
half a minute at most.
Finito lì, ok, mi
And
sono
at the
calmato
end,
subito.
I calmed down
Sono andato
right
a
away,
camminare,
and I
avevo
went
un dolore qua,
walking, and I had
che
pain
mi
in
era
my
rimasto
and pain
peso.
inside. It was as if weight.
E lì mi sono detto,
And I said to myself,
ma se
if
mezzo minuto di
half
rabbia
a minute of
e di
anger, of
aggressività mi
aggression
fa stare così
that
male,
hurts me so much,
figuriamoci di più.
imagine what happens when it
E
lasts
lì ho preso
longer.
l'impegno con me,
And I took the
visto
commitment
che
with
sapevo che dovevo
myself.
continuare a entrare in
I,
contatto
I
con questa
knew I had to
persona,
come in
tante
to
volte ancora,
to
in
maintain
situazioni simili.
contact with this
Ho
person,
preso
and
l'impegno che ho detto,
I
non
I
importa
took
ciò
the
che
commitment
accada,
that no matter what
non mi
happens,
permetterò
I will
mai
not allow
più di
myself
reagire così.
ever again to react with
Che fa male a me,
aggression. It's harmful to myself, it's harmful to
che non mi permetterò.
others,
E questo mi ha
because
aiutato e io
that
oggi sento una
really
profonda gratitudine per
helped
quella
me,
persona,
and I feel
perché mi ha
very
fatto vedere
deeply
qualcosa che c'era
grateful towards
nascosto
that
da qualche
person, because
parte dentro
he
di me,
showed me something that was
che non è
hidden
nella mia natura, del
inside,
mio modo normale
and
di
I
reagire,
didn't, it was
però c'era
not part
qualcosa
of
di
my
nascosto lì,
nature, my
si è
normal
fatto
way of
vedere.
acting,
Grazie,
reacting. So
perché
it
una
came
volta
out,
che
and
si è
thanks to that
manifestato ho
person,
potuto
because once it
affrontarlo.
manifests, I was able
Ok?
to
Quindi
to
la funzione della
eliminate
rabbia,
it. So the function
non
of
solamente la rabbia e
of
l'aggressività,
anger, not
non
just
ci permette di essere
aggression,
felici,
not
ci fa ammalare,
so anger and
distrugge le
aggression.
relazioni,
Not only do they keep
distrugge
us from being
l'amicizia.
happy, they
È
they
veramente
make
un
us
qualcosa
sick.
che
They destroy
ha un
friendships.
livello di distruzione
Has a level of destruction that
e
is
per questo
enormous,
l'importanza di
and
consapevolezza
that's
e
why
smettere di
awareness
nutrire questi sentimenti.
is important
Prima
to
cosa da
stop
fare,
feeding that
quando
feeling.
finisce la
So
rabbia, perché
when
una volta che uno
anger
manifesta rabbia viene
ends,
l'aggressività,
because after
a un certo punto finisce o
you
no?
know you know one feels angry, and then
Prima
aggression
cosa da
comes, and
non
then it
fare,
ends. So the first
non
thing to
giustificare
not
quella
do
rabbia,
is to
quell'aggressività una volta
justify
finita.
that anger or aggression once
Lo
it's
so che non avrei
gone.
dovuto dire, ma visto
Okay,
che
I
lui
know
me
I
l'aveva
shouldn't
detto,
have said that,
lo
but did
so
you
che
see
non
what
avrei dovuto
happened?
reagire
I
così,
know I
ma
shouldn't
visto
have
quello che è
acted like this,
successo.
but did you see what happened?
Ogni volta che
Did
noi
you see what she said? Did you see what
giustifichiamo
happened?
quel nostro
Every time we
comportamento,
justify our
andiamo a
behavior, we are
rinforzare
reinforcing it even more.
Riconosco che non
I
ho agito in modo
recognize
buono.
that I didn't act
Ok?
um,
Non ci sono
correctly,
scuse, non
and
mi
there are
devo
no
incolpare,
excuses.
mi
I
devo
don't need
preparare,
to
chiedo le
feel
benedizioni per avere la
guilty.
forza,
I
la
ask
chiarezza
for
di
the
non ripetere
blessings to
più
have
quel
the clarity and the
comportamento,
strength to
di
not
direzione
repeat
possa io
that
avere più
behavior? May I have more awareness to not react like this? Reacting like this hurts myself and it hurts others. I don't want it anymore. I don't want to act like this anymore. And like this, little by little, we're able to change this behavior. In the middle of this, there's the third mental factor, Chapa, called the concealment of improper behavior. What is concealment of improper behavior? In spite of being well incited, the mental factor of concealment of improper behavior is the mind that conceals one's negativities and is a part of ignorance. It has the function of being the basis for future regret and not allowing to come into contact with and remain in a state of happiness. So what is this Chapa? Chapa is when we have improper behavior, and what do we do in front of it? We hide it from ourselves. They've come from Brazil, and now they're on their way back. They come especially here from Brazil. Now they're going back. Getting back, Chapa, what is it? Let's give an example. That would be Chapa, this concealment. I act with aggression towards someone based on jealousy, for example, or envy, but I justify myself. I find a way to justify that action, and I hide from myself that that's improper behavior. I know that it's wrong, but I tell myself that it's fine, there's nothing, that it was just something small, and in reality, nothing at all. I hide from myself what I've done. What happens when I conceal improper behavior from myself? I create the basis for repeating it and reinforcing it. This concealment comes in two ways. I can hide it from others, and I can hide it in the end from myself. It starts by hiding from others. When we hide behavior from others, we end up hiding it, trying to hide it from ourselves. So if I have a behavior that's improper or wrong, why should I be afraid that others see it? Because I'm attached to an idealized image of myself. But is my objective to change that behavior or stay attached to it? So if someone knows about it and I want to keep an image, I want to change, and I'm attached to the image I have. But if I want to change that behavior, then it would be wonderful that person could see it and help me change it. This reminds me of something that I can't remember the exact phrase, but it's something like, I saw this on a t-shirt. I'm like this, and you should accept me how I am. I totally agree that I need to accept you for what you are. But you don't need to accept yourself for what you are. And I don't need to accept myself for what I am. In the sense, I am like this and that's the way I am. No. I need to direct myself to what I want. So I accept what I am, but I direct myself for what I want. So I see the other and I accept the other for what they are, but I interact positively to also help that person to become to change positively. So I recognize my own, I recognize the aspects of my body, speech, and mind that I want to better. Because we all have aspects that we would like to change, right? And those aspects, to change them, the first thing we need to do is we need to bring light to these behaviors, to bring them up to the surface, because if we don't see them, if we don't recognize them, then it'll be difficult to change them. And so this mental factor is when we are concealing from others and from ourselves behavior of body, speech, and mind that we know are negative. Actions, our speech, and our thoughts. It's also said that when an action is done with this mental factor of concealment, the strength, the karmic strength of that action will grow. Also, when an action is concealed, the tendency is for that action to be repeated again and again. So we really should be very careful. Here I've also written, by not accepting one's faults, not recognizing one's own faults, my negative behavior, body, speech, and mind, the negative characteristics, concealment has the function of turning a small negativity into a big one, and thus feeling regret and of not allowing to enter into contact with a state of happiness. It's the diluted mental factor that, motivated by attachment to wealth or reputation or image, attachment to image, wishes to conceal our faults from others. Sometimes we don't want to show something negative because if I do this, I won't get something material in exchange, or this person won't do what I want them to do, or to get more power, or simply because we want to keep a certain image. Do you follow? Are we there? The next one was the Tsikpa. We've already seen aggression. And let's go to the next one, Tadok, envy. What is envy? Especially attached to riches and honor, and unable to accept the excellent qualities of others. Envy is a deeply troubled mind and a part of anger. Its function is to make the mind unhappy and keep it from coming into contact with a state of happiness. It's the diluted mental factor that feels aversion when observing others' enjoyments, good qualities, or good fortune. In other words, envy is when based on attachment to something that I would like to have, it's based actually on desire. I would like to have a fame. I'd like to have attention. I'd like this here, that there, anything positive that I'd like to have. And I see this in someone else. This person has what I would like to have. And as a consequence, I feel aversion, anger, even aggression towards that person, not because that person did anything negative towards me, but because he or she has something that I don't have. That's a really bad state of mind, isn't it? This is envy. Something that's often put together with envy and in the 20 is not there is jealousy. What's jealousy instead? Sometimes there's confusion between envy and jealousy. Envy is I have aversion that can manifest up to aggression towards someone because they have something that I'd like to have, but I don't have. Jealousy instead arises from the attachment to something that I already possess, not something that I would like to have. And it comes from the fear of losing what I think I possess. So I see something, someone, as a threat to losing what I think I possess. And so I develop aversion towards that person. For example, this is my glass. At a certain point, the bottle gets close to my glass. Oh, what a beautiful glass. And I see that the glass says, oh, thank you. And somehow, you know, they really like each other, the glass and the bottle. But I feel unsure, insecurity with relation to my relationship with the glass. And seeing the glass and the bottle talk brings me to feel fearful of losing the glass, my glass. And so I generate aversion. This aversion can be manifest towards the bottle, but also towards the glass itself. By doing this, does the glass get closer to me or does the glass move away from me? And here we see how ignorant jealousy is, because the basis of jealousy is not wanting to lose the glass, but by jealousy makes the glass move away farther and farther. So jealousy is when we manifest aversion, we develop aversion, anger that can actually manifest in physical or mental, physical or verbal aggression, either towards our object of attachment or what we think is a threat to our object of attachment based on the fear of losing it, our object of attachment. But if I have total trust and I don't have any fear, one wouldn't develop this kind of mental factor. So this is a mental, negative mental factor that we don't see here described, but it's very present in our daily life. And if we analyze it a little bit, we can see the mechanism, how it works, and really try to work on it. So is the difference clear between envy and jealousy? What's great about and easy about the 20 secondary mental factors is that we know them very well. Serna, miserliness, what is miserliness? By being very attached to riches and honor, anything material or of recognition or anything sensorial, and strongly grasping at one's belongings. Miserliness is the mind that is a part of desirous attachment and has the function of not giving one's belonging to others. And it has also this fear of being left without. At the basis of miserliness is there's fear related to miserliness. By the power of attachment to riches and honor, miserliness or pleasure, miserliness holds strongly to one's belongings and is not able to give them away. So miserliness projects his happiness onto the things that one owns, and is fearful that if it doesn't have these things anymore, that it will suffer, and it keeps one from sharing with others. Miserliness is the opposite of satisfaction somehow. Satisfaction is when I'm sure that I have enough. And dissatisfaction, I don't have enough, so I need to keep what I have. Is that clear? Miserliness brings suffering. It brings the opposite of generosity. Gyu, the next one. Gyu et yu. They normally come together. So miserliness, let's remember, there's material miserliness, there's physical miserliness, there's miserliness of knowledge. For example, once someone came to me and said, Lama, I want to explain this thing to you, something that I explained. I put so much effort into understanding, but I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell anyone else. I said, why? He said, oh, with all the effort I put into understanding this, you think I'm going to share it so easily? This is intellectual miserliness. And it's really present. There's physical miserliness of not wanting to help people physically. The miserliness of time, not wanting to share one's time. There's the miserliness of space, or not wanting to share one's space. It can manifest in so many different ways. And one of the characteristics of miserliness is the more miserliness we have, the more fragile our happiness is. The opposite is the more generous we are, the more joy we have in sharing, the happier we are. The next two, gyu and yu, pretension and dissimulation. What is pretension? By being very attached to riches and honor, this mind very attached to riches and honor. So riches here in Tibetan, there's a specific word that makes reference to three things. Obtaining wealth, pleasures, sensory pleasures, and image. Here translated as attachment to riches and prestige and honor, but there are also sensory pleasures. So it's a mind that by being very attached to riches and prestige, honor, and wealth, etc. Pretension is a mind that is a part of attachment and ignorance that shows qualities that one doesn't possess. Its function is to be the basis for wrong livelihood. What does that mean? So pretension is I show others qualities that I don't possess because I want recognition, pleasures, and material things. Maybe someone comes to me and I show that I have knowledge that I don't have. I try to show that I'm more patient than I am. I try to show that I'm better at something that I actually am not that good at. There are two types of pretension. I can show something that I'm not. I can show something that I'm not with the intention to do something positive. In some situations that's possible, but you need to take that really with a grain of salt. Or show something that I'm not because I want to obtain power. I don't want to lose power. I don't want to lose recognition. I don't want to lose material things, etc. And this is very common. I don't know. A very simple example that I've seen many times. We're having a conversation and someone says something that someone doesn't understand, and the person doesn't understand but pretends that they do, and they don't want to show that they didn't understand something. And that's just something that the worst of pretension is when shows someone inner realizations that he doesn't have, or a love that he doesn't have, patience that he doesn't have, out of attachment to an image within a religious context. That's even worse. It's said that the worst is when someone shows realizations, inner realizations that one doesn't have. One pretends to have patience that he doesn't have, shows that he's reached a level of awareness, or, that it hasn't, because he's nourishing his own ego. He's nourishing his own ego from the recognition and appreciation from others, and one shows something that he hasn't developed. Dissimulation instead is his friend, his companion. The companion of pretension is dissimulation. In dissimulation, I hide, so I can show the love that I don't have, and I hide the hate that I have. So what is dissimulation? By being very attached to riches and honor, dissimulation is the mind that acts to hide faults and is part of attachment and ignorance. Its function is to be an interference for being able to receive correct instructions. Dissimulation is where I hide my ignorance, I hide my defects, I pretend, if I don't understand something, I don't show it, etc. So what happens? This doesn't allow me to learn. This doesn't allow me to better myself, because I'm hiding something. I'm hiding a defect, and that keeps me from getting beyond these defects. Is that clear? And yugu is also said together. Be careful not to have dissimulation and pretension. So you and you together, the Tibetans say yugu. So in other words, we need to be sincere. This reminds me of when I came back from Brazil after having left when I went to Brazil for the first time, after I had gone to live in India, and my grandmother, who's Jewish, was concerned, and she brought me to talk to the rabbi. I was 13, and with the excuse of having to do a bar mitzvah, but the point was, look at my grandson has gone to India to become a lama. What am I supposed to do? And the Newton Bonder, this rabbi, at first I got in front of this Rabbi Newton Bonder. he was quite young. He was relatively young. And we were in an apartment in São Paulo. We sat down. He looked at me before even saying hello, and he said, if I am me because you are you, and you are you because I am me, then you aren't you and I not me. But if I am me because if I am me because if I am me because I am me and you are you because you are you, then we can sit down and talk. Something quickly. Alice has come. She came to play the violin for the children. The violin she has in her hand is a violin that was made by our friend Francesco Toto when we were rebuilding the temple at the beginning. He said that he didn't have a lot to offer, but that he could build a violin for us that we could then sell. So our friend Shirley in China, she's bought it, but she hasn't been able to come it. He gave the name to the violin, Inner Peace, and today is the first day that it was played for the children. So let's just have 2 more notes of good auspiciousness. And we thank also Francesco, who made this a beautiful and this beautiful violin of great value, actually. So if I am me because you are you, and you are you because I am me, then I am not me and you are not you. But if I am myself because you are you, and you are yourself because you are you, then we can talk. This means that if I act in a certain way because you are you, I want I want you to see me in a certain way. I want something from you, and I act spontaneously. I'm not really me. So I'm adding together this yugu, this dissimulation and pretension. But instead, if I am myself because I'm myself, I don't try to show what I'm not, or to have or to hide anything that I have. Then we are able to communicate better. Any relationship, a long and mid and long term, any kind of dissimulation and pretension just make a mess. Once I was talking about this to some businessmen in Brazil, and they were saying that this is when you're like on an election campaign, you know, when you begin a relationship with someone, they call it like an election campaign stage. But if I show qualities that I don't have over time, how can I maintain that, you know? Or if I hide something, I get what I wanted to get, but I need to keep hiding that thing, and I hide more and more things. So it really, we shouldn't be afraid to be what we are. If a fault manifests to another, it's an opportunity to accept it and redirect it. The next one, gyapa, self-satisfaction. What is self-satisfaction? Based on being healthy, young, having signs of long life, or having any contaminated mundane excellences. Self-satisfaction is a mind that is a part of desirous attachment and has the aspect of feeling pleased, happy, and proud. Its function is to be the basis for all root and secondary afflictions to arise. It is the deluded mental factor that observes one's own physical beauty, wealth, or other good qualities, and being concerned only with these, has no interest in spiritual development. It is the basis for all negative defilements because it generates non-conscientiousness. Or rather, this is the mental factor where one feels like, look at how beautiful I am, and one gets lost in that, and there's no space for anything else. One sees one's own beauty, strength, intelligence, wealth, and one is overwhelmed by this, not leaving any space for anything else. This can be based on wealth, on intelligence, on power, or any characteristics that we have that we think is positive, special, and we get overwhelmed by that, and taking away the space to develop ourselves spiritually or to seeing others. The next one, nampartsewa, cruelty or violence. What is cruelty or violence? It's a part of anger. Cruelty is the mind with the aspect of having no compassion, no affection, and no love towards others, and thus has the function of inflicting harm. As aggression is manifesting violence towards any object of anger, not just a person. I can destroy something material. I can destroy a situation. I can point and direct my aggressions towards many different things. Cruelty, instead, is specific to beings. It's almost the pleasure in making someone suffer. It's desiring the suffering of someone, wanting to inflict pain in others. Unfortunately, this exists. And should we ever recognize this, even at the subtlest level within, it needs to be absolutely stopped and eliminated, because it's the worst among all of these mental defilements. One problem is that it's a mental factor that when it starts to take strength, one justifies it, and it nourishes a kind of pleasure in inflicting pain, because it's a way to feed an image of self. It's a really bad game. Anyone, should you ever recognize even the minimum amount of cruelty, one should do everything possible to destroy this mental defilement. It's something that should not be cultivated. There's some mental defilements. One says, "Oh, okay, they're there," but others that, if they're present, they need to be immediately dealt with and eliminated. And among all of them, in my opinion, it's one of the worst. And when Buddha described the 10 non-virtuous actions, the worst is this cruelty, the desiring the suffering of others, of another sentient being. The next two, Notsa Mepa and Tel Mepa, they're easy because we've seen their opposites. It's the lack of consideration for self and the lack of consideration for others. I know something's negative, but who cares? In relation to oneself or in relation to others. Let's read it quickly. What is the lack of consideration for oneself? A part of desirous attachment, anger, and ignorance. It is a mental factor that functions to not refrain from committing negative actions based on reasons that concern oneself. I see an immediate benefit in not avoiding that negative act and in doing that negative action. So so lying or speaking aggressively, I see its immediate benefit and I do it. It has the function of supporting the other root and secondary mental afflictions. It is the deluded mental factor that is the opposite of the sense of consideration for self. The next one, Chalmepa. What is the lack of consideration for others? A part of desirous attachment, anger, and ignorance. It is the mental factor that functions to not refrain from committing negative actions based on reasons that concern others. It has the function of supporting the other root and secondary mental afflictions. It's the deluded mental factor that is the opposite of consideration for others. Or rather, these two mental factors, they're when we see and we know that a certain type of behavior of body, speech, and mind is negative, but we see a benefit, a short term for ourselves, and so we don't care. We don't care in relation, be it in relation to ourselves or to others. The problem with these two is that if I see a negative, if I see negative behavior, and I'm able to not follow it, to not do it out of consideration for myself or others, if I just do it even once and I break that, then it becomes easier and easier to do it more and more. The next two, mukpa and gupa, mental fogginess, torpor or excitement. What is torpor? Is a part of ignorance. Torpor or foggy-mindedness is the mind that is inept for any desired action. It has the function of supporting the other root and secondary mental afflictions. It is the deluded mental factor that functions to make both the body and mind heavy and inflexible. Or rather, mukpa literally means fog. You know, you can't see, but I see so much fog in front of me. So it's that state of foggy-mindedness in front of the state of in front of the object of perception. So it understands, doesn't understand, sees, doesn't see. This state of when it's a positive mind and there's no clarity, it doesn't show its strength. And if it's a negative aspect, it is held on. I mean, we should avoid it both in meditation. Maybe one thinks that he's meditating, but is actually in this pleasurable state of foggy-mindedness. And the other enemy to meditation is excitement, the mind that just jumps from one object to another. What is excitement or mental excitement, mental agitation? A part of desire is attachment. Excitement is a mind that goes after pleasurable objects, thus making the mind unpeaceful, has the function of being an interference for calm abiding. Meditation. In other words, excitement is when, based on an object of desire, we can't stay still. We try to keep the mind on something, but it just jumps to another object of perception. This constant jumping from one thing to another is excitement. It's not caused just from a desire. The mind is attracted to objects of desire, but it's also a result of a habit. We are used to jumping from one object of perception to another. We're not used to keeping our minds still on one object, and this manifests clearly in excitement. Buddha described it like a monkey in the tree that jumps from one branch to another. That's clear, isn't it? The next one, Maddepa, non-faith. What is non-faith? A part of ignorance. Non-faith is a mental factor that doesn't believe in, doesn't have faith in, or doesn't desire virtuous phenomenon. It has the function of being the basis for laziness. It's the deluded mental factor that is the opposite of faith. What did we see previously? From faith comes aspiration. From aspiration comes joyful effort. The opposite of effort is laziness. Laziness, that we're going to see soon, right after, is the union of understanding the importance of something summed with the lack of desire for that thing. So when there's laziness, it's because the aspiration is missing. Wanting to do that thing is missing. Why? Because we don't believe in it. We don't believe it's possible. We don't believe in its qualities. We don't believe in our own ability to realize that thing. This non-believing in the object is the so-called non-faith. I know what it is, I know how, but I don't really believe in it. Or maybe I believe in its existence, but I don't really believe in the qualities, or I believe in the qualities, but I don't believe in the functions. So this non-belief and non-trust in the object is called non-faith. If I don't have faith in something, I will never have aspiration. Without aspiration, I won't put effort into it. So the lack of faith generates laziness. What is laziness? Lelo. What is laziness? A part of ignorance, because it's about not seeing the importance of something. So laziness is a mind based on the pleasure of sleeping, resting, reclining, with the aspect of having a lack of enthusiasm. It has the function of being an interference to virtuous activity. There are 4 types of laziness. Not doing something out of a simple lack of desire to do it, just pure laziness. Why? It'd be great to meditate, but why don't I meditate? Because I don't feel like it. The next type is not doing something due to procrastination. I know I should meditate, but I'll do it after. Then we have laziness of not doing something due to being preoccupied with worldly things. It's doing something useless to not do something useful. I know I should meditate, but today I need to see the last episode of that TV series. I can't meditate now. I need to clean my house. Yeah, I could do it later, but I want to do it now. I do something less important that I can do later because in reality I don't feel like doing that other thing. And the 4th, which is the worst, is not doing something due to feeling discouraged or having a low self-esteem, which means, oh, I would really like to meditate, but I'm just not able. So laziness is where we know about the importance of something, but out of lack of desire for that thing, we don't do it. We don't direct ourselves towards accomplishing that thing. We all have a little bit of laziness, don't we? So where's the antidote to laziness? The direct antidote is effort. But where does effort come from? Aspiration, desire, and aspiration comes from faith. So if I am lazy about something, it's because faith in that thing is lacking. I don't have desire. I don't have enthusiasm because in the end, because I don't want it, because I don't really know it. I don't believe in it. The next one, Pagme, non-conscientiousness.
Pagme pa kanshena chakpada shidanda timu ki char tokpe char timo lelo dan cheba la nenes gewe chönam mi komshins sakpadan chebe chönam le sim mi songates mi gewa pelwa dan gewa driba ten chebe le chenos.
What is non-conscientiousness? By being in a state of desirous attachment, anger, ignorance, and laziness, non-conscientiousness, or laziness, non-conscientiousness does not familiarize itself with virtuous phenomenon, does not protect the mind from contaminated phenomenon, and thus its function is to be the basis for increasing non-virtue and obscuring virtue. It's the deluded mental factor that wishes to engage in non-virtuous actions without restraint. In other words, non-conscientiousness is forgetting what we know. In other words, it's non-conscientiousness is, I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to pretend that I don't know. I don't remember. I know that I can't waste my life because it's precious, and sooner than later I'm going to die, but I want to do these things. I'm going to forget about that. These are aspects that we know, but we somehow, quote, forget about it, you know? Not everything, but some aspects we pretend as if they weren't there. I don't want to put effort into meditation and my spiritual path right now. I want to just relax. I'm tired about thinking always about the preciousness of this life. I want to have some fun. So I'm going to pretend that these things don't exist. I mean, we can also have fun within conscientiousness, but every once in a while, out of attachment to certain things, one tries to forget what he knows. Is that clear? The next one, I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but the time is short. Jenye, deluded forgetfulness. What is deluded forgetfulness? It's a mindful recollection. It's interesting, this deluded forgetfulness. It's a mindful recollection that by coexisting with an afflicting mind has the function of being the basis for distraction. The deluded mental factor makes us forget a virtuous object. Wrong forgetfulness, it's not that we forget something, it's we fill up our space with something else. Because it's in opposition to Trempa, which is mindful recollection, which is the basis of concentration. Here, it's on page 20. No. Where is it? It's in page 24. So mindful recollection. In mindful recollection, we stay focused on an object, and at a certain point, what happens? We lose our attention. It's not that we lose sight of that virtuous object because the mind went somewhere else, but we lose sight of it because we let other objects come in. So this thought that takes up that space is called deluded forgetfulness. So it's not forgetting something that our mind is empty and we're not able to remember it. It's I'm focused on a virtuous thought or conduct. I'm doing something positive, but at a certain point, something negative comes to my mind, and allowing the dropping of that positive thought or action through a deluded forgetfulness is related to the present. It doesn't allow us to stay on a virtuous object. I'm doing something beautiful, and then all of a sudden I go somewhere else. So who allows my mind to jump to go to let go of that virtuous thought and go to something negative? It's this deluded forgetfulness. This next one is related to that. Shishing Mayingpa, non-vigilance, non-alertness. So what is non-alertness? It's a discriminating awareness that by coexisting with an afflicting mind, a mental defilement, enters into actions of body, speech, and mind without awareness. It has the function of being the basis for committing downfalls, non-virtuous actions. The deluded mental factor that being unable to distinguish faults from non-faults causes us to develop the non-virtuous faults, errors, or rather. So non-vigilance, non-alertness is the lack of awareness about what we're doing, where we're going. The example that we gave the other day, I take the car and I want to go to Milan. At a certain point, I let myself be taken by, that view that way, and I end up on the road to Genova because I was missing awareness, vigilance, the vigilance about where I was going. So taken by attraction or aversion, I do something, I end up taking another road, even without realizing that I'm going on the wrong road. This is the non-vigilance, non-alertness. One doesn't realize what one is doing and loses that previous, loses his way on the path. And the next and last of the 20, Namparyenghwa, distraction. Non-alertness keeps us disconnected from our object, because the mindful recollection is, I'm going on this road, I'm going to Milan, I remember I'm going to Milan. Vigilance is, as I know where I'm going, I'm aware of where I'm going. And it's the opposite of mindful recollection is the opposite of deluded forgetfulness. But what I am doing, so the non-alertness is the lack of observance and awareness of what I'm actually doing. And let me just read this one more time. So mindful recollection is this fact of knowing where I want to go. I'm doing an action. I am aware of the action, of the object. I know where I want to go, and I keep that direction clear. Vigilance or non-vigilance or non-alertness is our ability or not to have the awareness of where I'm going, not where I want to go, but where I'm actually going. I want to go to Milan. I want to go to Milan. Is this the right road? Yes, this is the right road. I see that I've gone on to the wrong road. No. Let's get back onto the right. That's vigilance, non-alertness, non-vigilance. Maybe I remember I'm going to Milan, but I remember where I want to go, but I don't remember where I am actually going at the moment. That's the lack of vigilance or alertness. And the last one, Namparyenghwa, very present in our lives, distraction. What is distraction? A part of desirous attachment, anger, and ignorance. Distraction is the mind that extends, and thus it has the function of being an interference to separating oneself from desire. Meaning that what we want from our aspiration, from our objective, it's the deluded mental factor that wanders to any object of delusion. It's the mind, it's the state of the mind. This is the mental wandering without going to any clear point. Sometimes I'm here, then I'm there, and the mind is taken by memories, by speech, by words, and the mind is wandering without direction. We have moments of distraction, don't we? Sometimes, for example, distraction comes, we're concentrated, and at a certain point we hear a sound, and our mind hears that sound, that noise, and it goes there, and then connects it to something else, and the mind is gone. The antidote to distraction is when we see that our mind has gone far from where we wanted it to be or where it was. We can try to go backwards, to bring it step by step to that perception. For example, I'm reading a book or I'm concentrating on a concept. At a certain point, I find myself totally somewhere else that has nothing to do with what I'm doing. This is a result of distraction. Instead of right away coming back to what we were doing, which was reading, I go backwards. Okay, how did I get there? Oh, that made me think about that. That made me think about this. That made me think about that. Until I get to what I was actually thinking of. This helps me be more aware when distraction arises. Sometimes we're able, sometimes we're not at all. But it's an interesting training to try to do. And here we've concluded, we went quite quickly, but I think it's clear, the 20 secondary mental factors. And let's look very quickly at the 4 variable mental factors. Unfortunately, every time I've taught the 51 mental factors, we've always had to go very quickly through the 4 variable factors. Luckily, they're very easy to understand. It's not something that we need to worry too much about because they're variable. They're variable in the sense that they're positive or negative depending on who they go with. So if they go together with positive minds, then they're positive. If they go with negative mental factors, then they're negative. So there are 4 mental factors that, depending on the other concomitant factors, can be positive or negative or neutral. The first one, and there are 4. The 4 are sleep, regret, general examination, and then precise analysis. Sleep. It's not sleepiness. Sleepiness would be mukpa, foggy-mindedness. Here, this is sleep, like actually asleep. What is sleep? A part of ignorance. It is a mind that withdraws and, depending on its causes, can be virtuous, non-virtuous, or neutral, timely or untimely, and can be proper or improper, has the function of being the basis for losing the opportunity to do something. It's the mental factor that is developed through dullness or its imprints, through dullness or its imprints, and that functions to gather the sense awarenesses inward. In just a few words, when we sleep, remember, this is a very antique text, and sleeping was seen as losing time. Sleeping late in the morning was horrible. How could you imagine sleeping past dawn? I don't know. Today is a little different, but even in the time of our grandparents, it was something very negative to spend the morning sleeping. I remember once I was at the monastery in India, in Genlakpala, and one day, it was my free day, I said, I'm not going to put on my alarm. And one day he just bangs on my door, wake up, wake, it's so late, it's so late. What are you doing, sleeping? It's 11, he said. And I was so ashamed. I said, how did I sleep until 11? I got up really quickly, I opened up the door, and there was a kind of clock, a wall clock. It was 7. And he would wake up at 3. And he would do 3 hours of meditation and then breakfast at 6. So for him, it was really late. But in many antique texts, they say that the attachment to sleep is that the more one sleeps, the more one wants to sleep. And if one sleeps more, if someone sleeps more than they need, do they have more or less energy? They actually have less energy. I had many, many experiences of waking up naturally, but out of pleasure and attachment to sleep, I would go back to sleep. And then when I wake up after, I would be like just foggy-minded and confused. But the times I wake up naturally earlier, I have more energy. So this attachment to sleep, this takes away life's opportunities. They have us make us lose time, but it's a mental factor that is variable, because when we fall asleep, if we fall asleep in a virtuous state, our sleep is virtuous. If we fall asleep with a negative mind, our sleep is done with a negative mind. And if the thoughts are neutral, the sleep is neutral. So it's very important to fall asleep with positive thoughts. Try to fall asleep with virtuous thoughts of love and gratitude and joy. Try to direct our mind towards something positive, virtuous, when we go to fall asleep. When we fall asleep, that allows us to spend, all of this time, so more or less half of our lifetime doing something virtuous. The next one is Gyöpa, regret. What is regret? A part of ignorance. It is the mind of remorse towards any action done intentionally or unintentionally, or indirectly done, be it virtuous, non-virtuous, or neutral, timely or untimely, proper or improper. So done as a reaction to something, or just spontaneously. It has the function of being the interference to having a calm state of mind. It's the mental factor that feels remorse and sadness for actions committed in the past. If I feel regret for, is regret positive or negative? If I feel regret for something negative, the regret is positive. If I feel regret for something positive, then it's negative. It's when I see something that I've done in the past, and I think that that action shouldn't have been done. This is what we mean by regret. And according to how it's done, it can be an object of anxiety. One says, oh, I should have done this, but I didn't, and one can just look back again and again at the past. But generally, Gyöpa, in and of itself, this regret, can be positive or negative. Depends on what. If I have regret for having harmed someone or act out of aggression, I recognize that negative action, and that's something really good. But regret is not about staying with a feeling of guilt. It's just openly admitting that that action happened. The next one, Tokpa and Chupa. Tokpa is general examination or general investigation, as for Chupa is the precise analysis, detailed analysis. What is general examination? It's a mental discourse of a coarse mind based on intention and discriminating awareness that thoroughly searches. Its function is to be the basis for being or not being in contact with a state of happiness. It is the mental factor that examines an object in order to gain an understanding of its gross nature. In other words, general examination is when we observe something without getting into details. We make a general examination. We familiarize ourselves with something. I can analyze something positive or negative. I can analyze racism, for example, going behind the different reasons why I feel superior to others, and on a general level, bringing me to feel more racist. This would be a general examination that goes towards being a negative, being non-virtuous. Or I can do a general examination on equanimity, on the rights of everyone's rights, or on why it's good to be altruistic. When we have a general examination, we're looking at one object, one situation, one concept in general terms, and we're familiarizing ourselves with that. Instead, precise analysis is the same thing, but we go into specific aspects. We don't stay on a superficial level, but we go into detail, and we go deeper into the object, familiarizing ourselves even more. What is precise analysis, a detailed analysis, based on a mind of intention or discriminating awareness? Precise analysis is a mental discourse of an exacting mind that analyzes in detail. Its function is to be the basis for being or not being in contact with a state of happiness. So if I familiarize myself with something virtuous, that's going to help me to be in contact with happiness. If I familiarize myself with something non-virtuous, that's the basis for not being in contact with a state of happiness. It's the mental factor that examines an object in order to gain an understanding of its detailed nature. So, general examination and precise analysis is when we observe any object in a general terms, and then we look at more detailed aspects of it, familiarizing ourselves superficially or more in detail. So these four variable mental factors, sleep, regret, general examination, or precise analysis, they're neither positive nor negative. They depend on what other mental factors they go with and on the actual object that they analyze. So here we conclude a brief lecture of the 51 mental factors. I want to remind you that there are more than 51 mental fires. Just look, as we saw on page 46, if we look, sorry, I didn't get that. So they're an indication on the various aspects of our mind. So use these 51 I invite you to reread these 51 mental factors and recognize within this, these factors, reading this, understanding them better, they allow us to know ourselves better, to have more awareness for how we are, and as a consequence, allow us to direct ourselves to what we want to be. As I said before, we shouldn't oppose what is, but accept what is. Stop feeding what we think is negative. Don't oppose it, but redirect to something, to the positive that we want. So I invite you to read, reread, observe, have doubts, talk about, and look at other aspects. It's interesting, for example, if we have characteristics of our mind and we give them a name, at that point they become more obvious, clearer. For example, talking today, when we talked about jealousy and envy, giving a name and a definition that's clear. It's almost like, you know, it's like someone tries to go by hidden and then all of a sudden is seen. And this is something that, to me, is something that's always helped. And I hope the same for you. I chose to follow this text because it's one of my favorite topics that brought me so much benefit, and I hope it will be as much so for you. So now we conclude on page 11 with the verse, on page 11 with the defects, page 11, the defects of samsara and the qualities of nirvana, without exception, derive from the mind, as said in Buddhist teachings. Those who have intelligence and discernment must give importance to knowing the secrets of the mind, as said by Yongzing Yeshe Gyältsän. I don't think that we've revealed all the secrets of the mind. I don't think we know all the secrets of the mind, but we've begun to look at them on a course level, to observe them. I invite you to not stop observing, not to stay in a constant analysis, but to to develop awareness, to know yourself better and better. And it does so much. The more we're able to do this, the more we'll be able to direct ourselves. Because in every moment, I don't mean I don't know if it's every moment, but very, very often, thoughts arise, attitudes come, but there's more than one possibility in front of us. If we have this awareness, we can choose, we can direct our mind, and this means so much. I thank you very much for all these days together that we've created together, this opportunity to follow and look at all of this. Thank you also for the translation into English that allowed me to speak only into Italian. So so I thank those who had to listen only in English, and also thank all of you who listened only in Italian. I think having seen the 51 mental factors is not a conclusion, but it's just it's the opening to something. I mean, we've just begun. There's so much more to see, to know, and personally, it's something that's always given me a lot of joy, and I hope it's the same for you. It's time for our final dedications, and we conclude here for today for these teachings, and then we'll have many, many more opportunities in the future.
Losan tempe drume sasumki drove munsela takto ne gyur chi yidama guru ratna mendrala kam niryata yami kewa kunto yanda lama dan drame chike pelalo sadan lamge yunte rapsone dorje change kopa Nyur tove sho nimodele tsendele nime kuyan delekshi ninsen takto delekpe kuncho sumke ngodrubso kuncho sumke ngodrubso kuncho sumke trashisho All'alba
at dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. I want to thank everyone. There's something, just very, very quickly, I was asked, I was reminded actually, and I think it's very important that we can be here together because the center exists. And a few years ago, I pushed so much, and we were able for all Dharma activities to be free. Mostly because I don't like this relationship based on price, on money, and also because all the Dharma teachings in my life that I received, I never had to pay for anything, but I never received a teaching without making an offering. This was my own personal experience in all of these years, and it's the center that allows us to be here. It's not one person. There are the lights are lit. There's the air system. We have a really high tech an air purification and changing system. The many things. Many things that allow us to be here comfortably, but at the end of the month we can't go to the electric company and say that we want to pay with our blessings. I mean, we need to pay we need to pay our bills. So my desire has always been to keep this antique tradition. When Buddhism arrived to Tibet from India, the ones who sustained the spreading of the Dharma and the teachings, those who were able, were the kings at the time. So I don't want there to be any kind of fixed price or cost for teachings. I remember Lama Ganchen when he came to the teachings, and when Lama Ganchen first came to the West giving teachings, and people would ask how much do they cost, and he was shocked. But at the same time, I want people to be able to support the center based on their own abilities, capacity. And as people have always asked me, what's the right amount to give? And I think I've always said that it shouldn't be too little or too much. And Lama Ganchen created the €1 a day because it was 30 euros a month. It was this generosity garden campaign that he created many, many years ago. Now we've been able to conclude all of this. We know all the details, but it feels really like a miracle somehow. It's quite shocking to have built all of this, and now we've given a direction to support this center. So giving emphasis to this campaign that created by Lama Ganchen many years ago, the Generosity Garden. So those who want, and in the way that they want, it's no obligation, but it's a way to support this reality that allows us all to repeat these experiences, to come into contact with the Dharma, because I'm the very first one to adhere to this campaign, because for me, the center is what allows me to make my life meaningful. In these days that we've spent together, I'm the one who's received the most from this experience from all of you, and I have infinite gratitude. I have infinite gratitude to the center, because without the center, I wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't be here. And and here now, for example, we're still here talking, and lunch is waiting for us, and there are many people working for us to have all of these comfortable conditions. So if you want to continue receiving these benefit and want others to receive the same, I ask you all, to the best of your abilities and resources, to support the center. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone. As I said before, these moments are very important, where we can dedicate days to deepen the Dharma, concentrate on the Dharma. It's very special. So thank you, everyone, and have a good lunch, and we'll see you soon. Lama Caroline, I think she'll start at 3:34. 3:30 or 4.
Ricordo che domani mattina alle 8:30 ritorniamo alle pratiche quotidiane, quindi ci sono gli insegnamenti delle ispirazioni mattutine, morning inspiration, domani alle 8:30.
So tomorrow morning at 8:30. So let's remember that tomorrow morning at 8:30 there'll be morning inspirations as part of our regular program, and this afternoon Lama Caroline will be here.